שלום וברוכים הבאים לפודקאסט אסטרטגיה, הפודקאסט של המכון למחקרי ביטחון לאומי. והיום נדבר על גרמניה, מדינת מפתח באירופה, המונה כ-85 מיליון תושבים, מה שהופך אותה למדינה המאוכלסת ביותר באיחוד האירופאי. במשך שנים רבות היא גם נתפסה כקטר הצמיחה הכלכלית באירופה, בזכות הצלחות התעשייה שלה. עבור ישראל, הממשלה בברלין נחשבת לאחת הידידותיות ביותר באירופה, גם בתקופות מתוחות כמו זאת שהתחילה עם השביעי לאוקטובר. אך בזמן האחרון עולות שאלות קשות לגבי הכוח האמיתי של גרמניה. התחרות בין ארצות הברית לסין והסנקציות האירופאיות נגד רוסיה, בעקבות המלחמה באוקראינה, פגעו קשות בכלכלה הגרמנית. המערכת הפוליטית במדינה נמצאת במשבר. הקואליציה בשלטון התפרקה, והקנצלר אולף שולץ הודיע על רצונו לפזר את הפרלמנט, הבונדסטאג. הבחירות המתוכננות לפברואר כבר מוצגות כגורליות לא רק עבור גרמניה, אלא עבור אירופה כולה. מה מצב היחסים בין גרמניה לישראל כשנה לאחר השביעי לאוקטובר? האם הבחירות בגרמניה יובילו לעוד ניצחון לימין הקיצוני? איך המצב הפוליטי בגרמניה ישפיע על אירופה ועל היחסים בין ברלין-ירושלים? שמי רמי דניאל, אני רכז תוכנית המחקר על אירופה במכון, וכדי לענות לשאלות האלה נמצא באולפן שלנו דוקטור פטר לינטל, חוקר ב-SWP, SVP, מכון מחקר בולט בגרמניה, ומומחה, בין היתר, ליחסי גרמניה-ישראל. השיחה בינינו תתנהל באנגלית. Thank you very much, Peter, for coming and sharing with us your insight. And maybe we can start by talking about German-Israeli relations. And you could tell us what characterizes these relations in general, even before October 7th?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me again, I have to say, but thanks for having me. And I'm happy to speak about those issues. Yeah, let's start with Germany's take on Israel, right? How does Germany see Israel? And I would say German politics is determined, or Germany's politics towards Israel is determined by two things, two pillars, two prisms, if you want. One is, of course, the historical one, when we speak about the historical responsibility from the Shoah, from the genocide, and what has been termed also recently with the Chancellery of Merkel as the Staatsräson, the reason of state, so very important element of German foreign policy. The other one, on the other hand, there's another pillar, which is more universalist, not particular towards Israel. It's the pillar that Germany views basically all foreign relations, and that's international law, human rights, and so on and so forth. Both we need to understand, I need to explain that, especially to Israelis. Both are elements coming from the Second World War. Both are elements which come from the idea never again. So it's never again means we need to protect Israel, we stand on Israel's side, but never again means also for Germany, a certain way of international law, pacifism or peace orientation, which also has changed to a certain extent with the war in Ukraine. But these are pillars of German foreign policy. And we have to say, while both pillars got stronger over the 2010s, there's also certain tension because on the one hand, Germany got closer to Israel in terms of the historical responsibility, but over the 2010s, there was also more criticism towards Israel in regard to settlement issues and stuff like that. So there is a certain tension inherent in the German look at Israel and how Germany views Israel. And that's...
I'm sure that you are saying tension, you are saying support for Israel, but peace-oriented policy. I'm sure that October 7th and the idea that Israel goes to war creates an additional tension between these two pillars. How could you describe to us the German reaction to the events since October 7th?
That's very important that you mentioned that because it's almost overwhelming. Right after 7th of October, the notion of never again is now, sort of the immediacy of the Holocaust was really palpable in German society. It was really, for the majority of some German society at least, the notion of historical responsibility was really felt.
After the Hamas attack.
After the Hamas attack, after the terror attacks. and it's held on for a long time. The war was evolving. More and more voices also became critical of how Israel is waging the war, for reasons. Why is there no political horizon? What about the humanitarian situation? After the reports, proper or not, about famine in Gaza came up, there was also the other pillar, the international law pillar, the humanitarian issues pillar became very strongly, and so it's almost at times it feels these two pillars became unbridgeable, and the discourses people are really overwhelmed by these notions.
And do you feel that there has been a change since it's more than a year? So we saw that in relations to the war, there were few points in which European states in particular changed their position. There's the beginning of the war. So in Lebanon, there's the question of arms embargo against Israel. And maybe also, can you tell us what the German reaction to the last development, which is the arrest warrants against Netanyahu and Gallant was?
These are many points, so I try to be brief. So there was certainly an involvement of, we're speaking now on a governmental level, right? Not on a societal level. So the governmental level was, for a very long time, strongly supporting Israel with hardly a critical notion. That changed, I guess, March 2024, stuff like that, when you could see Foreign Minister Baerbock becoming more critical. And with the famine issue, it was very clear that she was saying, well, there needs to be more humanitarian aid and stuff like that. So there was an involvement there. In terms of weapon deliveries, it's very interesting because Germany has been criticized internationally strongly for doing that. But, the devil is in the details, as they say. So also two developments here. There was the vast chunk of the weapon deliveries was in October 2023, some in November, and then it slowly faded out. And then there were basically from February till, a couple of weeks ago or months ago, there were basically no weapon deliveries. And then
it was a decision by the government or a state of...
That's the question, right? The government said there is no weapons embargo. That's what they say, and I believe that's true. But still, it might have been, a political signal. So to in some quiet signal. Now we see arms deliveries again, but I don't think any, weapons of war. There are more and more helmets or stuff like that was delivered. Still, it is a change. The question is now really why the government changed its policy. My own analysis, I don't know if it's true, is that the pressure of the opposition became very strong and the government itself was rather weak. So that led to a certain development. I think so. That was one of the reasons. Still, there was no delivery, to the best of my knowledge, of weapons of war or something like that. Now, coming to to the ICC. The ICC is maybe, the epitome or the purest manifestation how the prisms I spoke about, the universal pillar and the particular pillar, are getting in direct confrontation. Because two things are true. I mean, you have to understand that Germany was instrumental in the founding of the ICC in 2000. Germany still claims it's the strongest supporter of the ICC in the world. That sentences by the German government spokesperson. And now you see Netanyahu and Gallant are facing an arrest warrant, and the question is, should they be arrested on German soil? And of course now these two elements are in direct confrontation, and there is no good solution for that. You harm either pillar in either way. So now what we see with German politicians is, and I have to say, they don't deal with it in a good way. They want to escape positioning. The government basically said, yes, we acknowledge the ICC ruling. We support the ICC. We still have a historical responsibility towards Israel. And for the time being, we check what the ICC said. So they didn't give any answer, probably also because they know that they're only 2 months in government, and then someone else has to deal with that. The opposition now said, they said it's a scandal, it's impossible, and we will not arrest Netanyahu on German soil. Now, my criticism is that both positions are not untrue, but not correct. Because at the end of the day, it is not a political matter. It is a judicial matter. And the only one that can decide upon that is the German court system, the judicial system. So whatever the politicians do, whatever the government does, unless they drop out of the Rome Statute, they don't have a say in it. The moment Netanyahu or Gallant will fly to Germany, come to Germany, it's not in the hand of the politicians. So
and the judges don't make so many speeches. So
they don't make so many speeches, exactly. And someone will sue. It's not in the hands of them. So my criticism is it's a false signal towards everyone. It's a false signal towards Israel, because Israel might think, oh, Germany is having our back. It's a false signal to the rest of the world who claims, well, Germany has double standards when it comes to the ICC. And it's a false signal towards the German society because the polarization, it doesn't, if you don't have a clear stance, it furthers the already existing polarization. So I think the treatment of the German government or the German politicians per se of this issue was very bad, because at the end of the day, it's very clear that Germany, unless it drops out of the Rome Statute, cannot escape the international law.
Thank you. And you mentioned polarization and the state of opinion, opposition, and the German society. That these are things we hear about a lot of countries, but maybe following what you just say, how did October 7th impact the situation of the German society in general, in the polarization you mentioned, also in the views on the conflict between Israel and its neighbors?
Very strongly so, I'd say. I haven't seen it's always the conflict is always a polarizing issue. It creates emotions among people since decades. But I haven't seen something like that ever, actually, I have to admit. That's for the reasons mentioned. On the one hand, you feel like, with the notion of never again is now, you feel like this immediacy of the Holocaust. On the other hand, without me saying that this is true, but people claim there's a genocide. That's what people say.
In Gaza.
In Gaza, yeah, right. So the notions couldn't be stronger, so to speak. At least with now, the point is, differentiation is lost in times of polarization. So you often hear only the more radical voices, or the voices that are more in one side. But still, I would say there are at least two issues that need to be tackled. One is, obviously, there is a tremendous rise of anti-Semitism in Germany, and you cannot diminish that. You cannot talk that away. I have colleagues who have problems, or had, now it's getting better, but going to the universities, Jewish colleagues who say, well, maybe you teach on Zoom or whatever. There were assaults of Jewish students in Israel. And so really, the number of issues is quite troubling, and this needs to be tackled. On the other hand, without diminishing the other issue, there's also a question, for example, what can be a legitimate Palestinian position in Germany? You don't have to support that, but this is a question. There is a substantial number of Palestinians in Germany. There's a lot of crackdown on conferences, on public speeches and stuff like that. Coming to the extent that you have some, I'm very cautious about that, but some sort of problematic definitions of anti-Semitism, which leads to a point where even the notion of Palestine has allegedly anti-Semitic content, and that's of course also problematic. This issue needs to be addressed. How can we deal? What exactly is Israel-related anti-Semitism and what not? How can we safeguard the Jewish community in Germany? And what's the place for a Palestinian diaspora in Germany? These are issues that are very, very much fought upon right now.
So, and in this complex and complicated context, as we said, we are getting closer to maybe to elections in Germany. Maybe
Not
for
maybe. We're
so
getting
you are
closer.
sure. You are sure. It's not official, but you are sure there's going to be elections. Maybe for our Israeli friends, we will explain a little how the German political world functions. It's not very far away, very different from what happens in Israel. We have one major house of parliament that is the Bundestag, also elected through a very complex system, but that is mainly proportional. Last elections were in 2021, and we had a coalition of three parties. The chancellor was Olaf Scholz, a social democrat, and his party ruled with the Greens and the Liberals. So how did we get to this point that this coalition cannot govern Germany anymore?
Well, yeah, it was the first time in Germany. I mean, in Israel, people are used to governments with tremendous amount of parties, right?
And we know how complicated it is.
Yeah,
and
you know,
dangerous.
yeah, it's in a way it's complicated, comparable maybe to the government of change of Lapid and Bennett, right? In a way, but yeah, it was the first time that Germany had a governing coalition with three different parties, where, especially when it comes to financial policies, the Social Democrats and the Greens were on one side, and the Liberals were on the other side. And basically, it is this issue over which the government fell because they couldn't agree on how future expenses should be financed, new debts, or cutting public supply or so. So that's basically the crucial question, I would say, the government fell. And now we will, in all likelihood, have elections in late February.
3 months, more or less. And I will not ask you to try and tell us what the results will be, because 3 months is rather a long time. But maybe we could talk about the situation now of the German political spectrum. And my question will be not only what is the situation in the center of the spectrum, but also on the extreme. We saw, and I can say to the audience that I met you in Berlin in July, and the question was the rise of the extreme right, the AfD party. There's also a populist left party that is on the rise. Can you make us a short summary of the state of the political spectrum in Germany right now?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. So there are the more established parties. It's the Social Democrats, the Conservatives.
Conservatives, it's Merkel's party.
Angela Merkel's party, Social Democrats, Olaf Scholz's party, the Greens, Foreign Minister Baerbock's party, the Liberals, which had the Finance Ministry, and others. So these are the more established parties, and then you have two parties on the margin. One is the one you mentioned, the AfD, far-right party, some say right-wing extreme party, which is, of course, of tremendous concern to many in Germany, because that was a thing which people thought is, a phenomenon of the past. I'm not saying that they are, really, it's a continuation of the past, but it's for many a troublesome development. And then you have a new party, which centers around one politician. That's also a new thing in Germany, unlike in Israel, which is called BSW, the Union of, or the Sarah Wagenknecht. And that's a party which, it has a new field. It's left conservative, so to speak. So they are left on social issues. They're close to workers' rights, public spending, they are left, but they are conservative or right-wing when it comes to immigration and other issues. So that's a new party, probably successful. And yeah, the fact is that many parties don't want to be in a coalition with both of them, certainly not with the AfD. There's a firewall, as they call in Germany, or they say in Germany. And many parties also don't want to be in a coalition with the new BSW. So that will be interesting in terms of how can coalitions formed within the next governing coalition, or after the next election. One last party, the left, is still in government, or is still in parliament, not in government, but it's very unlikely at the moment that they will return to the German parliament.
So you have a fragmentation that will make the situation maybe complicated for even after the election, if I understand you right. So you will have exactly like in Israel, the period that seems sometimes very long of moving from the parliament to the government and building a coalition. So you are expecting a long period of maybe uncertainty.
Let's see. If you look at the polls right now, it's very clear that the conservatives, the party of former Chancellor Angela Merkel, are very much in the lead. They're polling by 33%, followed next by the AfD, by the radical right party, and then come the Social Democrats with some 16%. So as things stand right now, the most likely possibility is a so-called grand coalition. It's or national unity government, as you say in Israel, right? As that's the conservatives with conservative chancellor will be in a coalition with the Social Democrats, at least in terms of numbers. I mean, they have to find out if they can work together or not, right?
So, and we are talking about a country that is key to Europe, to the European Union. It's the biggest one in terms of population. It's also a huge economy that is important for Europe. And it was going through a change in terms of security. The famous Zeitwende of Olaf Scholz, this idea some maybe military conscription could come back in Germany, the idea of spending more to the defense, the delicate issue of help to Ukraine. So we have this huge and important country entering a crisis when Donald Trump arrives in the White House. How do you see the impact of these elections on Germany's foreign policy and Europe's defense policy?
That's a very interesting question for a variety of reasons. First, last time when Trump was in office, we had with Angela Merkel a very experienced leader, right? So she knew how the global system works. She basically knew also how to deal with Trump. I mean, they wouldn't be best friends, but I mean, she could stand up to him. Now we're in a different situation, probably with politicians that are less experienced. That's one thing. Secondly, and that's on a lot of people's minds right now, what we see for a while, but will be certainly accelerated now with the presidency of Trump, is the withdrawal of the US from Europe, right? We already knew here with Obama the pivot to Asia, that Europe is less important than Asia. But also Trump had already said he will withdraw even support if the Europeans, support from NATO, if the Europeans don't increase their spending in arms. So in any case, in my opinion, there will be a rise of spending in arms. There will be, a certain the necessity of becoming more responsible for European security will arise, and that's a thing we'll see. But it will also be, that's costly. And
you said the government ended its path because of money. So we come back to money.
Yes. It's costly. And I mean, whom do I tell? Right? In Israel, there's probably, I don't know, but one of the highest expenditure for the military per capita in the world. So in Germany, it was a long time not that, or it wasn't the case that the expenditure was so high, but it will change. I'm certainly it did already change, but it will also change in the future. What that means for the Russia-Ukraine war, the European support for Ukraine, I don't know. It's not my field of expertise. But at least what I can say that the leading parties, Social Democrats, Conservatives, and others are really convinced that they need to step up in the support of Ukraine. One last thing regarding conscription, it won't happen because it's too expensive, too technically difficult. I talk to military guys and they say, no, that's fancy talk.
So maybe to come back to your subject of expertise, and in the last question to close the circle we opened, so what can be the impact of these elections on German-Israeli relations, maybe in two parts. First of all, a country that enters election campaign generally is more sensitive to public opinion? Do you think it will have an impact on German stance towards Israel? And also further, after the elections, how do you see these elections could change or not the relations between Berlin and Jerusalem?
Generally speaking, I don't think that there's much impact of public opinion on German political elites. It has been detached for a while, especially now during this war, we have to say. What I'm to a certain extent afraid of, and I hope it will not happen, that Israel or the war will become a topic of the election, because that won't do any good to that issue. But I hope it won't happen. If you look into the future, as I said, it's almost certain that the conservatives will be in one way or another in the government, probably with the chancellor. So they strongly support Israel with the Greens, with the Social Democrats, or that's the most likely options. So it won't change much in this regard. But I still say but. If you look at the more global situation, I'm sure that Germany will still support Israel, but the criticism Germany faces for supporting Israel, claiming that it has double standards in a variety of ways, that's an issue that the new government will have to tackle most certainly, not only with the ICC, also in other issues. So it will be interesting to see how the new government will navigate its relations with Israel and beyond that.
So we have a lot of things to follow up on the situations in Berlin and around Germany. Thank you very much, Peter, for all your very interesting answers, ותודה רבה לכם שהייתם איתנו. ניפגש בהזדמנות הבאה.